I've taken countless trips through dozens of countries over the last decade, and in fact, my first ever solo trip was almost exactly 10 years ago in 2015. I've since traveled through 57 countries, and the opportunities that I've been afforded thanks to the confidence, independence, and experience I've developed from traveling solo are priceless. In truth, I've become so accustomed to the adventurous lifestyle that I decided to move abroad alone without even a second thought. My life certainly changed for the better when I first mustered up the courage to start traveling solo, and I will always be grateful that I did. In this video, I'll go over some of the tips and recommendations I personally used and continue to follow when I travel alone. The first tip is to practice in your hometown or nearby. All solo travelers started somewhere, and that somewhere was most likely close to home. If you can get comfortable doing things like checking into a hotel, renting a car, taking a train, or navigating public transportation close to home, you'll already be experienced when you're doing these things while solo traveling. You can even start with just a day trip to build experience and eventually work your way into taking longer solo trips. My next tip is to take yourself to events, concerts, or other activities. Get in the habit of booking things for yourself and practice getting out of your comfort zone. If you're worried about being judged, trust me when I say that there will always be fewer bystanders that will think you're weird and more bystanders that will admire you for doing something on your own. Once you get into the habit of booking activities for yourself, it won't take long for you to embrace the freedom that comes with not having to wait for anyone else to do exactly what you want to do. My next tip is to get some practice. Become the planner of your group, or if you're already the planner of your group, it will come more naturally. If you want to build the skills to start traveling solo one day, but aren't quite ready to take the leap, consider taking the lead when planning your next trip with friends or family. Once you get into the habit of choosing accommodations or travel plans, making reservations, and organizing all the logistics, you will already be familiar, capable, and experienced when it comes time for you to plan a trip for yourself. My next tip is to choose a place where you can speak the language. Especially when you're just getting started traveling on your own, you can set yourself up to feel more comfortable and confident if you visit a place where you can speak the language. Not having to worry about a language barrier will make things easier overall, and you can instead focus on getting more comfortable with other aspects of solo travel that may be potentially stressful or may require a considerable amount of mental energy. The next tip is to get familiar with your personal travel habits. The greatest benefit of solo travel is getting to do exactly what you want, when you want, and how you want. You get to decide when you want to spend and when you want to save. When you are the decision maker, you can take time to be mindful about your personal travel goals and priorities and set your own pace. If you know you like to have slow mornings without rushing to activities as soon as the sun comes up, you can choose to relax as long as you want. If you like to keep a faster pace and see as much as possible without having to wait for others, you can choose to do that too. If you see yourself as both types of travelers on different days, depending on your mood, or in different places depending on the destination, you can choose to be flexible. Once you get more familiar with your personal travel habits, you can continue to plan accordingly for future trips. My next tip is to do your research and have a plan. While flexibility is a major benefit of traveling solo, I suggest having the overall structure and important details of your trip planned in advance of your arrival. Having your transportation secured before you land at a new destination is a helpful way to avoid unnecessary stress at the start of your trip. In addition to your transportation, consider how you intend to find and pay for your transportation. It's helpful to already be prepared with a SIM card and a credit card or ATM card that works internationally prior to departing for your destination. My next tip is to book accommodations with great reviews. Securing accommodations with great reviews may mean you have to pay more or you have to organize your trip further in advance, but knowing you will be staying somewhere safe is worth it. It may be common sense to avoid booking a hotel or a rental property with bad reviews, but also consider that you should avoid booking accommodations that are too new to be reviewed so you can avoid any surprises upon arrival or during your stay. I've written a complete guide of my tips and recommendations for booking an Airbnb as a solo female traveler, and I'll link it below. Another tip: consider joining a group tour with other solo travelers. Another helpful way to gain experience as a solo traveler may be counterintuitive, but it's to join a group tour. I've joined several group trips organized by Intrepid when I was just getting started and continually over the years, and I found that I was still able to gain valuable experience, enjoy the flexibility of traveling when I wanted, and visit destinations I was too intimidated to coordinate on my own. I've also written a complete guide specifically on this topic, and I'll link it below as well. My next tip, if you usually travel with friends or family, you can get some practice by arriving earlier or staying later on your own. If you already have a trip planned with friends or family, you can opt to arrive independently or extend your trip. The same can be said if you're joining a group trip. You can get some solo travel practice by arriving earlier or staying later on your own. One of my first solo travel experiences was in Marrakesh after an Intrepid tour. I did learn a lot about myself and my personal travel preferences and habits, and I look back on that trip as a learning experience. My last tip, of course, is to keep safety in mind. Being vigilant and aware of your surroundings is always smart for any traveler, but it's especially important for anyone traveling alone and for a woman traveling alone. I'll be sure to link my guide with my top safety tips below, or keep an eye out for my next video where I'll discuss them in more detail. So that's it. If you're planning your first solo trip and have any questions about my experience and how I practice these recommendations, then let me know in the comments. Happy travels!